Welcome, Dilworth families. Thank you for joining us for what I expect to be a very informative discussion. My name's Chris Panino, and I'm the president of Dilworth Youth Sports Association, and want to thank you for joining this discussion. At Dilworth Little League, we're proud of the baseball product we field every day, and that's due in large part to a lot of you tuning into this broadcast who are volunteers helping us every day during the season. We know you have a lot of choices about where to play baseball, including many travel programs in the area. With this discussion, we're happy to bring you a youth baseball conversation that will touch on the questions many of you have about travel baseball and how it compares to what you've experienced here at Dilworth Little League. I want to thank Greg Yin for leading the conversation. Greg is a parent of a Dilworth Majors alumni player, and Greg's son is currently a member of a local travel baseball team. Greg is the manager of our major SteelFab team and has coached several of our challenge teams. For all those reasons, I think Greg is uniquely qualified to lead this discussion. Joining Greg is a longtime friend of Dilworth Little League, Eddie Hall. Eddie is the head coach of the Charlotte Catholic varsity baseball team and founder of the Queen City Corndogs travel ball organization. Many of you have participated in Eddie's summer camps and clinics held each year at Freedom Park and know what a valuable resource he is to Dilworth. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I hope you are too. Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. And this is this discussion that we've had with some of our 12 parents over the years, and I want to broaden the audience a little bit. Obviously, the baseball landscape has changed a lot since I was 12, 13 years old, and even probably any from when you were growing up playing. So travel ball is here. It's not going away. So let's get into travel. We'll talk a little bit about basics, travel, structure, some of the similarities and differences, and then some of the questions, maybe some of the myths and realities of travel ball as it's out there. So Eddie, welcome. Thanks for being here. And let's just get into it. So travel ball split into kind of spring, summer, and fall seasons. You can just give a sense of what that timing looks like and how it's structured.
Yeah, no, first off, guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on the call here and talking some baseball. And I told my kids today at practice, I know it's cold outside, but it's baseball season already. So back to the question, Greg, timing wise, travel ball, honestly, I think they play way too much travel baseball. Let me tell you that. I think some tournaments maybe even start in early to mid February, and those guys, they'll play tournaments all the way through November or into December, possibly going, if they're going on down to Florida, they're playing towards Christmas. So, when it comes to us and what I do with the Queen City Corndogs, we don't start anything until middle of May with our practices. We'll play all summer. So we'll play June 1st through the end of July, and then we'll take August off, and then we'll play the fall. We'll play September and October, and then give our players November and December to get ready for school ball and get some time off. But I will say timing wise, there's way too much baseball sometimes that I've seen with travel baseball, especially at the younger ages, which in my opinion is the time where kids need to be at playing other sports or focusing more on just training and developing versus game play. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on timing wise.
And as we get into it, obviously Little League's got a different age cutoff than travel ball traditionally does. Like Little League, you can't turn 13 before August 31st, or else you age out of Little League. Travel ball is that April timeframe. Can you just talk a little bit about that and how you see that kind of manifesting itself in the travel ball world?
Yeah, I think at the younger age groups, I think people try to take advantage of it, whether it's right or wrong. Once like my teams, we started 13 years old. So usually at that point, our kids are playing with their grad year for the most part. There's a few players when maybe they're undersized and may play, with that grade level down just because they're that age group. But most of our players, especially once they hit freshman year of high school, they're playing with their grad years. I think when they're younger, sometimes people are trying to get an upper hand from a size standpoint. And when you're 8, 9, 10, you see a lot of those bigger teams winning events. And if you looked at their grades versus the teams they're beating, usually there's one grade off there. So that's one thing at the younger age groups that I definitely don't love. And I think more teams need to play with their grade level.
Yeah, for sure. And then on travel ball, you talk about tournaments. There's a lot of tournaments there, and people hear different travel ball organizations, big business, right? So you've got USSSA, you got Perfect Game. Talk a little bit about the organization and then how teams are grouped together from a class standpoint in the travel ball world.
Yeah. I guess I'll preface starting with USSSA. I think they're the most well-known organization around here, especially at that younger age group, kind of 14U and under. I think their competitor might be Top Gun. If you guys have heard of those, I'm familiar with that. But I guess this would also be a plug for my varsity pitching coach at Charlotte Catholic, Jason Terry. He runs USSSA in North Carolina, and he does an unbelievable job. And with my teams, with the Corndogs at 13U and 14U, we play majority USSSA events. One, because Jason Terry takes care of us, but two, because the competition pretty good, and you can kind of group yourselves with AA, AAA, or majors. Most of my teams with the Corndogs, Coach Cook and I, we fall under the AAA or majors category. We've played a little bit of AA in the past. That's more of your, like, I guess you'd say your lower levels, but once you get to AAA and majors, it all grouped together. So again, U-Trip, Top Gun are your younger focus. And then when you get into the showcase level, once they're getting into middle school and high school, we usually introduce them to Perfect Game events. Perfect Game is a huge company. Jeff Hall is a good friend of mine. He runs some Perfect Game showcases in the area, and they do a lot of good events. Perfect Game is usually a step up when it comes to maybe locations or fields. They get a lot of the turf fields in the area. So when weather comes in, that's huge. And PBR is another company that's coming in at the younger age groups too. PBR does a really good job with their high school showcases. And once kids get to high school, I think the PBR's write-ups when it comes to player evaluations are probably the best in the area. The last one, Greg, I would touch on would be Prospect Select. They're starting to get into the younger age groups too. But I love playing a Prospect Select events. They have really good customer service. They have great fields. So we tend to play in a couple of those with my teams throughout the years as well.
Yeah, for sure. When we talk about travel ball and Little League, one of the big differences, especially at age 11 and 12, is the field size, right? Little League, we're playing 46-foot mound, 60-foot bases, no leads, right? You can't steal until you cross the plate. Travel ball at 11 and 12, you're playing on a 50-foot mound, 70-foot bases with leads and things like that. So what did that 11, 12-year-old level in terms of kind of fields, rules, stats, all that kind of stuff between kind of Little League level and travel ball?
Yeah. And I haven't even really said this yet, but let me say this to everybody out there. I think playing Little League baseball through age 12 is the best thing you can do. That you can mix in the junior and senior teams that you guys have at 13 and 14. That's great too. But I always recommend playing through that 12-year-old age group, and kids are growing. That's one thing that I see. I'm the athletic director at Holy Trinity. I'm obviously the head coach at the high school at Charlotte Catholic. And that 6th, 7th grade year is very awkward when it comes to field size. And I think it's just kind of part of the process, whether you're undersized or you're bigger. Sam a few years ago wasn't the biggest guy in the field, but he's caught up to the field now. And obviously we can see that in his performance in certain aspects, but I would say don't worry too much about the field right now. I would surround yourself with the best coaches you can at that level, and then everything else will work itself out as you grow and develop.
Yeah. One of the things we've seen is our teams will go play, our 11 and 12-year-old teams will go play U-Trip tournaments. My 11-year-old team will start up in March and play a couple of tournaments before our Dilworth season gets in. And those games can turn into needs, right? Because 11-year-old catchers aren't throwing kids out at second base. So you get on, you're at least on second, maybe on third, and it's just a totally different ball game.
Yeah, I think it's just pace of play and how different teams are. It's gonna depend on the level of the play and what teams are looking like. But usually by the time they're 12 or 13, they've hopefully have caught up. Let's say 13 or 14, they've caught up to the field. But I do know that 11, 12 age group can be awkward at times.
Yeah. And there's probably some 12-year-olds who overpower a field at 12, but it quickly changes once you get on, especially once you get onto the big field, and footwork and fundamentals become really, really important.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of myths and realities. And one of the things we get from our parents and just out there is saying, look, competition is better in travel. So I want my kids to play the best competition, 10, 11, 12 years old. They need to go there.
Yeah, no, that is definitely a myth. That's one reason why the Queen City Corndogs don't start until 13U, because I feel like anything under that from a travel ball standpoint is watered down and can be, I don't even know the right terminology, but sometimes it can just get it gets watered down at that age group. And I feel like waiting to play travel ball till you're 13 or 14, you is probably going to be the best bet for your son. Now there is times when a kid's grown a little bit more that, like you said, you need to throw a challenge team or an all-star team in a tournament or two and just challenge them. But it depends on the event too. You can't guarantee that event's going to be quality competition.
Yeah, for sure. And we've gone and played. And we've done all right against some of these travel ball teams up there. You've seen some of our teams and some of the older ages, and we've been kids who can play.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I don't want families to fall into having to go play travel ball at 10, 11 years old. Number one, usually it's very expensive. Number two, there's still usually, and I know there are a lot of dads that coach in Little League, but there's still about the same coaches at those travel ball teams. And number three, I think Little League umpires are better than some travel ball umpires. So that's another part of it. I have a great relationship with umpires, but that's something else I want to throw in.
So let's talk about coaching, right? So you talk about daddy ball a little bit. You talk, some of these organizations will advertise professional coaches, right? And so what's your experience there?
No matter what environment your son or daughter is playing in, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, put them in an environment where the coaches care about them. The coaches are organized. They're structured. I can tell you right now, I was not the best player by any means, but I feel like I can run a good practice. There's some really, really good coaches out there that didn't play at the highest level that are still able to do things the right way. I've also worked for guys in the past that played at a high level and they're not very good at developing or training players. So just make sure you're able to build a relationship with the coaching staff, make sure they treat people the right way. And if you find coaches that care about your kids, like that's the most important thing. And if they're having fun and they're going to eventually develop and they're going to want to keep playing and continuing to grow in the game.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like as coaches, we want our kids, baseball's the best game in the world, right? We want our kids to love the game, to appreciate the game, to keep playing as long as they can keep playing, whether that's middle school, whether it's high school, or it's college. I want to see my kids at 11 and 12 playing for you 3-4 years down the road. That's the goal as a youth baseball coach. So you touched on costs, right? And travel. So to give people a sense of what a season might cost, just kind of the fees, and then you talk about what travel means.
Yeah, I guess I can break it down maybe by tournament, or when I enter a team in a USSSA tournament at the 13 or 14 U age group, that tournament's for 2 days is going to cost anywhere from $300 to $500. Just depends on the weekend of the demand that weekend. When it get to my older teams and you get in those perfect game events, PBR, Prospect Select, it's anywhere from $1,200 to $2,500. So, if you're playing 6 tournaments at $2,000, there's your tournament fees that are adding up. And then you're going to add uniforms in, and you're going to add field rentals. You're going to add your coaches. Like I'm paying coaches. My coaches aren't working for free. So they're making money a little bit too. So all of that adds up. And Coach Daddio with the Corndogs and I, we had a budget where we kind of work through things and make sure we're keeping the numbers as low as we can, but expenses do add up. And that's one thing that I definitely would try to avoid at the younger ages. Keep it fun, play the lower cost. And then once you get to 13, you can take the step up. But by the time the kids are in high school, Greg, like tournaments get expensive and player fees can add up.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, like, for sure. I think our major's like $225, something like that for a season, right? So and you're getting 15 games plus playoffs or something along those lines, something like that. So travel ball, right? How much travel, especially in some of those younger ages, 12, 13, 14, how much travel is there in travel ball, really?
Charlotte, North Carolina is one of the best areas for baseball in the country. I've coached at the college level. Like I've recruited different areas. Obviously, Florida's really, really good at baseball. Texas, California has some talent. But when it comes to baseball, like North Carolina is one of the best states in the country. So in my opinion, I don't understand why people need to travel to Arizona, to Florida, to even Georgia all the time just to play a competitive schedule. There's plenty of really good tournaments, really good events, really good programs in this area. And that's one thing that I've talked to guys is like, how can we create maybe a little bit better um, how can we keep more teams at home would be the best way to describe it. Because when you see kids at the younger ages flying all over the place and playing week-long tournaments, sure, it's a great experience for the family. But I think you could do it just as well here, save some money. Now, my 13 and 14U teams, Greg, they usually travel once in the summer, once in the fall. Once they get to the high school level, I try to take them to college showcases and different events. And so I will go outside of the Charlotte area once they get to that high school showcase level. But anything under 14, 15 years old can stay local because Charlotte's a hotbed for baseball.
Yeah, definitely see a lot of good teams, even from Eastern North Carolina and places coming in here to play. So one of the things that we hear is, hey, you want to make a good middle school team, right? I want to make the Holy Trinity team. You probably get to have 40, 50 kids trying out for that team, right? I don't play travel ball, right? I'm not going to have a chance to make that team.
And I'll tell you this right now. I'm in my office at Holy Trinity, and I can look right here at the signups for our middle school baseball tryouts. We have about 60 guys trying out right now. Okay. Now Holy Trinity's, we have about 1,100 students. It's probably one of the best middle school athletic programs in the city. When you compare it to a Charlotte Christian country, like great schools, all very equal when it comes to high school and middle school baseball, but we just have a lot more players at Holy Trinity. So I can tell you right now, Coach Keith Johnson, my head coach at Holy Trinity, he does not care where you play baseball. If you show up and you compete and you're a good human and you do things the right way, he's going to keep you. He doesn't care if you played at Dilworth, Myers Park, South Park, 5-star national, or the Dirtbacks. Like if you can play and help us as a program and as a team, you got a good chance to make the team. But I will say, I think making the middle school baseball team at Holy Trinity here is harder than making the JV or varsity team at Charlotte Catholic. So I think that could probably say something to you folks out there as well. But don't let it discourage you if you do get cut from a middle school team. And it's not because you necessarily play on this team or that team. It's just usually the maturity level at this age is different. I got cut when I was in 7th grade, and looking back on it, it's the best thing that ever could have happened to me. So
Talk a little bit about middle school ball, right? Like you got right in our area, we got a ton of kids at AG, another really competitive program that's tough to make. So if you're talking to parents, talking to kids about who are 12, 13 years old, get ready, 6th, 7th grade, get ready for middle school, what would you tell them? How do you best prepare yourself for that experience?
Yeah, I guess number one, obviously you got to have a skill set, right? Like, if you can't catch a baseball, throw it across the infield, or, square up a baseball and hit a line drive, like you're probably not going to give yourself a very good chance anyway. So number one, that would be my first piece of advice. Find a good hitting coach, find somebody that can train you the right way. And that doesn't just include hitting and pitching, like get in the weight room, find somebody that can train you with baseball specific training. I've directed some folks different ways. Tim Mansfield's a great friend of mine. I think Sam's worked with him a little bit, actually, and he does a lot of baseball specific training. But I think that's number one. Obviously, you got to have a skill set. Number two, I would say, is find a way to stand out. There's so many kids that kind of just fall in the background, especially in middle school, because socially sometimes it's a weird time. But if you can find a way to stand out, whether that's just showing up early, like going out and stretching in the outfield, moving your body instead of sitting in the dugout on your phone, or at the end of practice, at the end of tryouts, like going up and shake the coach's hands. If he's a teacher, go talk to him before tryouts. But just any of those things that when you're applying for a job or having a job interview, right? Like that's part of the tryout process too, especially as they get to middle school. So number one, you got to have a skill set. So find somebody that can help train that and not just baseball throwing and hitting, right? Like training the body. And then number two is just finding a way to stand out and leaving a really, really good first impression.
Yeah, I think this kids coming off of our teams, hopefully they have a skill set, so they understand how to practice, right? How to be coached, how to be good teammates, all those kind of things in a trial environment. We talk about in a trial environment, you make a mistake. How do you react to that and make that next play? As coaches, something to look at, right?
Absolutely.
How do kids respond? What are the other things that's the difference between Little League and travel ball is pitch counts and the rules around that. On Little League, throw more than 20, you can't pitch the next day. You go to some of these travel tournaments, You tribute his 3 innings. Kid can pitch 100 pitches in 3 innings and still throw the next day, right? And we've seen. What's your kind of experience with that, and how you think about arm care and travel ball and all that, all those pieces?
I'm glad you didn't have Coach Ryan Benson on here. That was the Corndogs with me as the head coach of Butler. Don't get us started on pitch counts. I think Josh Rudd, who's a big Charlotte baseball guy, he's definitely put some people on blast on social media because of it. I will say you have to plan. Like, it can't just be, hey, we're going to show up, try out, and we're going to throw 80 pitches the first game, right? Like, I can tell you right now at the high school level of my 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, we started throwing December 15th. Today was actually our first day of bullpens. So like, we had a month, 5 to 6 weeks building up to our first pen. And then we still have a month, 5 weeks until our first game. So like, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. And if you're on a team where you're throwing, if you're throwing over 90 pitches at any time, to me, that's way too many. But a good coach is going to be somebody that's going to be able to build it up. So maybe weekend one, you're throwing each kit 30, 35 pitches, right? And then we're just going to work up from there. But there's got to be a plan and a thought process behind it, because if you're just getting thrown out there and you're throwing God knows how many pitches, like to an extent, like after a while, that could technically be child abuse, in my opinion. And if anybody's playing for me or any of my teams, that's going to be probably priority number one, and make sure we're doing that the right way.
Yeah, I think I told our 11-year-olds first weekend in March, probably 30, 40 pitches, second weekend 50, and we probably won't go up 50 until after spring break. Just from, I think it's good from a pitching depth development standpoint, right? We're going out there and we want to win. Later in the season, we have 7, 8, 9, 10 kids who pitch, and you don't get that burning out kids.
Yeah,
early.
Develop as many arms as possible at the younger age groups, because we need them at the older age groups. And don't overuse them. Don't burn them out, because that's the worst thing you can do to a young kid. And but yes, arm care is something huge. We do Jaeger bands every day. You could Google Alan Jaeger's long toss program and those different things. If we wanted to, I could go on a whole tangent about arm care, but there's so many little things that they don't just pick up a ball and start throwing. They need to warm up the right way, prepare their bodies, and then get into their throwing for the day. But that's the biggest thing for me.
So let's as we start to wrap up here, so if you're a parent, and you're looking at travel ball, I think 2 questions. One is, what kind of kid should be thinking about travel ball, right? And the second is that if I'm a parent looking at travel ball, what kind of questions should I be asking when I'm looking for potential organization for a fit to play?
Can you give me like an example of maybe the age of the kid and maybe skills?
So some kid who's 12 going on 13 thinking about, do I play travel ball or do I not? And not a star player, but somebody who's...
Yeah. In my opinion, I would finish out 12U at the Little League levels. If, like you were talking about, Greg, if you could take an 11 or 12U team and play a couple USSSA tournaments, I think that would be great for the kids. But I don't think you need to go find a travel team until you're 13. If you are going to do that, I will tell you the one organization I love is On Deck. I think they do things the right way. But again, it's all about the coaches and the people behind that organization. On Deck's been around forever because they do it the right way. Just make sure if you are going to do it, make sure you're going to a place where the coaches are going to take care of the kid. The development's going to be the forefront. Some people culture used to be the buzzword. I think development is now. But I would say if you are 12 years old and you're an average player, I would finish out Little League. And then at that 13U age group, when you age up into 13U, then we need to look for a travel ball team. Timing wise, like there are tryouts that you want to prepare for accordingly. Some of that stuff's ahead of time, but that would be my recommendation. If it was my son, I don't have kids, but hopefully when I'm blessed with kids, that's what I would do in a few years.
Yeah. What questions can parents ask? What should they be looking for? Like they go out to a travel ball tryout. What should they be looking for?
Yeah. Number one, who's going to coach the team, I think is huge. If it's just one guy, it's going to be really tough. Hopefully there's at least 2 of them in the dugout. And again, if it's under 13U, you're probably going to have some dads coaching. That's perfectly fine. Once you get to the 13, 14U age group, you're going to start transitioning probably to more like paid coaches per se. And as dads, you probably want to step back and watch it anyway. So, but my question, number one, who's coaching? How many coaches? Number three would be how many players are on the team? If there's 10 players on the team, right? Like you got to think about pitch count and how much pitching each kid's going to have to do. Sure, they're going to get a lot of at bats with 10 players. One kid's out at the beach one weekend, you're with 9 players trying to play 4 games in a weekend. Good luck getting through that pitching wise. I can tell you that right now. So that's when you start seeing some issues. I think 12 or 13 is the perfect number for a 13 or 14U travel team. I guess 2 more things I would add. Number 4, where do they practice? Is it just an indoor environment to where it's just hitting in a small training environment, or pitching in a bullpen, or can they go outside to a field? Do they have field space? Can they long toss? Can they run bunt coverages, first and thirds? Can they hit on the field? Can they scrimmage? Like that's something huge that I think doesn't get talked about enough either. Yes, the indoor facilities are awesome, but being able to have field space, inter squad, and do more team specific stuff like they do at the Little League age group, I think is huge. And lastly, I would ask other families that have played for that organization, whether that's some travel ball group on Facebook or parents that have, seen those teams at tournaments, or former players, like look at the retention rate. Like, are players leaving? Are they going elsewhere? That's one thing I take pride in, Greg. Like I'd say we have about a 95% retention rate with the Corndogs. Cause I think we do things the right way and treat people the right way. But ultimately, if people are leaving and there's a lot of turnover, I think that tells you all you need to know. So those would be the points for me, or the questions that I would ask a program or a travel ball organization before you even get to the tryouts, really.
Yeah. And there's certainly a ton of them around Charlotte, and we've talked about 13U. And just the last question before we break is, so Charlotte Catholic, right? Your first year going in there, what do you just give maybe the parents a sense of kind of your expectations as a high school coach of your players, so that they can think ahead a few years and imagine their sons or daughters, those 9th, 10th graders going to play for you. What are you looking for?
Yeah. So I'm in a unique situation because obviously I'm a head varsity baseball coach, but then I run a travel ball organization. We have 6 teams on our college team. So when it comes to the travel ball side, like, yeah, kids are paying to play. It's going to be more equal playing time and all that. But when it gets to the high school level, like the families aren't paying me to coach. So the number one thing that I have focused on this year, as I've tried to build our culture at Charlotte Catholic, is just being as honest and as transparent as I can with my players. So whether that's in the fall, after our fall practice, we had one-on-one meetings, and I told each player exactly where they stand, where I see them going into the off season, into the spring. I'm going to have meetings in the next week and a half, 2 weeks before tryouts, and give guys an idea of where they're at as well. And if parents want to have conversations, I'm going to be as honest and as transparent as I can. So find a high school coach that's going to be honest and transparent. I think that's huge. Sometimes it gets lost in the speed of the game sometimes, but if you have someone that's going to talk to your son, treat him like a young man or a grown man when he gets to the high school level, and just be honest and open with him, I think that's where your son can start developing a relationship with a coach, but also learning how to communicate in more of a professional setting. So that's the main thing I've focused on this year, Greg, is just being honest and upfront with people. Sometimes people may not love what you say, but as a coach, the best thing you can do is be honest with the player, because in the long run, like, the players are going to look back and hopefully they're going to appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. That's setting those expectations up front and following. I think this has been good. We're right at, I think, where we wanted to be time-wise. Eddie, was always, thank you so much for your time. And I know that a lot of our families have worked with you through school, through camps, things like that. And I hope that you'll continue to be a friend of Dilworth, and we'll continue to send some great players your way from the camp for the Corndogs and with Holy Trinity and Catholic. And I think it's a great relationship. Yeah.
Absolutely, Greg. Well, thanks so much for having me, man. This is awesome. It was an honor to be on here. Dilworth's a great organization, and I appreciate everything they do for the game and to grow the game. So thank you guys so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg and Eddie. I think all of our Dilworth families got a lot of good information from your discussion. Before we close, I'd like to remind everyone about Dilworth's Juniors and Seniors program for players aged 13 to 16. For those of you that choose a travel ball path, our Juniors Seniors Commissioner, Jay Breitz, has been able to structure a schedule that allows participation in both travel ball and Dilworth Juniors Seniors at the same time. And that's not an exception. Many players were able to play this dual track over the last few years. And of course, our junior seniors teams conveniently practice and play home games close by at Sedgefield Middle School and AG Middle School. While travel may provide your player with a higher level of competition, many of our junior seniors teams in recent years have successfully advanced to state and regional all-star tournaments and faced very skilled opponents. Regardless of your choice, we hope that this information is helpful in your decision-making and that Dilworth can continue to be a part of your player's successful baseball journey. Thanks for watching, and good luck this season.